Hello friends, and welcome once again to Figure Study, where we appreciate the form in something that's not exactly Transformers. Today we're getting back to Bastards with the Unrustables or Unrustable Bastards Spector General figure, which is the, bad guy version of the regular Unrustables crew. Now this is a figure that I wasn't entirely sure I was going to get at first, because the white color scheme seemed a little bit too blank for my taste, but truthfully, I love the original Unrustables figure so much that I was just kind of like, well, might as well get another one because they're just fun to mess with. And so, yeah, Spector General. Much like the base Unrustables figure, the one that's orange and black, this one comes with 2 heads for the little rider and then 2 heads for the big robot. I'm not going to go through all of them. Instead, I'm just going to focus on the 2 that I have equipped here because these are the 2 strongest. So, Spector General is pretty much the exact same figure as Burly. Yes, that one, which is also this one. These 2 are in essence the exact same figure. What sets them apart is pretty much just the color scheme, and the one other thing being the head sculpt for the rider and the head sculpt for the robot, which we will see in robot mode. But yeah, the colors are really the only thing that set these figures apart. And you can see, I think the white is a nice kind of contrast in comparison to the original, but it's still a little too blank for my taste, and I'll get into that in a minute once I get this guy gone, but still excellent figures all around. Though there is one sort of difference that you do get with the Spector General, and that is the weaponry. You get shotguns, also comes with a pretty awesome looking scythe, which I'm actually going to take these off for now. But they can store in vehicle mode, as you can see. And the shotgun can stay there. But yeah, it's the same figure, it's just a different color scheme. And this color scheme does work for the most part, but the issue that I have with it is that it is a little bit kind of blank looking when you're looking at it as a whole. I will say there are some very subtle shade differences between the tones on this figure that I do think make a difference, but I don't think they make enough of a difference. Like, it just barely shows up on camera, and specifically because of the lights, where you've got a very stark white for different parts of the bike and the rider, and then you've got this like very off-white kind of gray color, and then there's like a slightly darker gray in a couple of places as well. So there are some tonal differences, but the contrast just isn't quite there. It still looks a little bit too close, and as a result, it just kind of makes things look a little bit sparse in the detail department. Which is a shame, because there is plenty of detail here. It's the exact same details here as you have on the regular Burly figure, but a lot of it gets lost here because of that color scheme. Even the silver for the wheels, like, it's still there, and you still have the silver details here, but you can't really make it out that well because of the color scheme, because it's just so blank looking, which is a shame. I do think once I take the time to do some panel lining on this guy, he's going to look really awesome, because those details are really going to pop on this white and gray color scheme. But until then, we're just looking at the stock out-of-the-box version, and yeah, this is kind of what made me unsure about getting the figure in the first place, is that it just looks kind of blank. Even though, again, I know it's not. You've got some darker grays here and there and some lighter whites here and there, but just the tones are too close. The subtle shifts in color are there, but they're just too subtle. Anyway, enough harping on that. Let's take a look at the rider all by his lonesome, because this is one of the things I really liked about this. And get this off to the side here. So yeah, the Spector General rider is the same, it's the same figure as the regular Unrustables rider, Burly. This guy definitely stands out more just because of the brightness of the plastic, but still just looks very sparse. And yes, I know I did panel lining on this guy, which we'll get into a little bit more in the future at some point. But you can see like some of the details have been brought out because of the panel lining, and I think that definitely helps. And I think that once I do this to Spector General, that's going to be awesome. But like I said, I wanted to do the video on this guy before doing any kind of modifications, because I just want to look at the figure as it comes out of the box. Let's take a quick look at Burly here again so you can see That is the Burly face, and Spector General comes with the same thing, only in the white and, well, the gray color. So yeah, you get one of these heads with that guy too. But what I really like about this particular Spector General head is it's actually a skull. So yeah, you can see that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. Problem being the details of the skull don't really stand out that much because you just have paint for like the little vents on the sides of the helmet and the eyes. Would have been nice if that was painted like a white, or if this whole thing was white and the helmet was painted gray to kind of help it stand out more as a skull, but whatever. I'm also hoping that if I do some little panel lining in there, it'll help bring out the teeth more, but it's still a cool look. I definitely like the skull head on this guy. The rest of him is just the same, though the side panels here are quite plain, whereas Burly gets these vents, and like there's the second set that's got like rivets and stuff. This is just like a plain panel there, which could probably be easily modified with a logo or painting something on there, putting on a sticker or whatever, but that doesn't come in the box. Also, I have to say, because you get a skull head, I definitely think this is the weapon to go with. So let's just get this set up real quick, and you can see that, yeah, that's that's pretty cool. Disappointingly sterile color scheme aside, that looks pretty freaking rad. I definitely like the robot skeleton with a giant, well, I guess not giant, but still, with a scythe look. That's very cool. I am very much into that. Alright, let's get him out of the way here and bring in the motorcycle so we can talk more about that. And here again is the motorcycle, which is exactly the same as the Burly default Unrustables motorcycle, except that it's this white and gray color instead of orange and black. And a lot of the elements get separated a lot better with this color scheme, and that silver on the tires comes out a lot better. And yeah, it's just, again, a little disappointing how this color scheme just makes it look kind of blank. Because again, there's those mild tonal differences in there, and there are definitely molded details in there, but it still just looks kind of meh. The one bit of real color you get on the bike is this kind of spray painted pinkish purple thing over the Unrustables logo. And this is good. I mean, I like this little extra splash of color here, but I just wish there was more color to differentiate it, because again, the white and the gray and the slightly darker gray is just, it's too close. Everything's too close to each other. It just kind of blends together. And yeah, you do get some extra color up there, but you don't really see that very well from up there. It's fine. It's just a little bit of a shame that it's so kind of stark looking. Let's bring everything in here back into frame, because you know why. That's right, it's size comparison time. So here we have the Spector General bike next to a Power of the Primes Deluxe-ish, and the Spector General Rider with our, going back to the basics with our Samus amiibo there. And there you can see the Rider is a pretty decent size. And then in terms of vehicles, the motorcycle is still a pretty darn good size. I'd say this probably puts it at like roughly Voyager-ish, maybe, kind of. I mean, Rodimus Unicronus is a little bit big for a deluxe, I think, but still kind of falls into the deluxe category. So yeah, that is how big all that stuff is. But yeah, it's like I've said over and over again at this point, the motorcycle itself is fine. There's lots of details that are in there. It's just you can't really see them with the Spector General bike as well, because it's just such a stark and basic looking color scheme, which is a shame. And I feel like if this was the only figure I had, I'd be more disappointed. But since I do have the other one, I think it's a nice contrast. Although I do think I'll be happier once I can bring out more of that detail with some panel lining. But until then, we're going to take a look at the robot mode, and the transformation on this is exactly the same as the transformation for the Burly figure. It's just, you know, different color, like I said. But we're still going to go through it, so let's get to it. And here we have the Spector General in his combined robot mode. And I mean, it looks cool. I will say it looks cool, and I mean, it's just as cool, more or less, as Burly. Yes, that one. And there are certain things about the sculpt that I'll get into that I really like, but that color scheme, it still looks blank to me, and that's disappointing. And again, here you can see there are some slight tonal differences in places, like you've got this area in the chest here, kind of going between these sections that adds some nice kind of darker tones in there. And there are other bits too that kind of break it up a little bit, but it still reads as kind of blank, just because the color tones in the whites and the grays and all that are so close together. And, you know, I got this figure thinking that maybe in hand the slight color differences would be enough for me to be like, oh, okay, it doesn't look as blank as I thought. But no, it still looks kind of blank to me, which ultimately I think is okay because, you know, that means it's ripe for the customizing. But if you're not interested in customizing, I don't know. I mean, as I said, in the motorcycle mode, it's the same thing with robot mode. It's pretty much whatever you're looking for. If you find a color scheme that you like, get that color scheme. So if you like this color scheme, then by all means, this is a good one to get. But for me, it just comes off as pretty blank looking. I do think it's going to look freaking awesome once I get some panel lining done in there. But as it is, it just looks too stark for my liking. Now, one thing I didn't do with the transformation is I didn't reattach this, so I'm just going to plug that back on there. And you can also see here the shotgun's still attached, just had to rotate it around because the Spector General, the weapons that come with this guy, are not as easy to work around as the pistols that come with Burly. So you can still store this stuff in the combined mode, and it still works just fine, but it's a lot harder to transform with this thing still attached, so that's why I took it off. But there we can see him in all of his splendor. Move him off to the side because we're going to bring in Burly here. And here you can see Burly, and as you can tell, they are exactly the same in terms of height, exactly the same in terms of transformation. They are exactly the same figure, with the only differences being the color and some of the very minor swappable details like the panels for the rider legs, which become the chest, and the head sculpts. And I've got things to say about that head sculpt, but for now, just, yeah, you can see they're the same figure. And you'll probably notice I've done some panel lining on Burly here. And I don't say this because I'm trying to say like, oh, I'm hot stuff because I did this or whatever, because panel lining is not exactly a difficult thing to do. But this looks really good with the panel lining on there because it just makes a few more of the details pop a little bit better, and it is just great. I especially like how adding some lining for the head sculpt really helps because it just brings out a little bit more detail that is really cool. And yeah, so the panel lining with Burly definitely makes a difference, but even without the panel lining, I feel like Burly would come off a little bit better in terms of just color, just because of the contrast between the black and the orange, and even the gray for the chest there. It's a more interesting color scheme that makes more of the details stand out. Whereas, as I've said, with Spector General, it's all kind of pretty close to being the same. Still a great figure, and I think once I do the panel lining on this guy, which I'm going to do after this video is finished, I think it's going to make a huge difference, and this is going to look really freaking awesome. But again, as it is right now, it just comes off as looking a little blank, especially when compared to Burly there. Though I will say, blank or no, they still look good together as part of two figures in the same overall set. And now, as I said, with the details and whatnot, pretty much everything on Spector General is exactly the same as Burly. And there are some nice details that are there, they're just difficult to make out. Even like the thighs here, like these panels here are white and these are a darker gray, but even though you can kind of tell the tonal difference from this distance, the further back you go, the more it just kind of seems like just a bunch of white. And it's fine when you're looking at the figure up close, but when you've got him on a shelf, it just kind of comes off again as looking kind of blank. But there are some nice details in here, and almost all of these details are the same that you get with the default Burly figure. I do feel like these panels are a little too blank, and I kind of wish that the default Spector General figure came with extra panels, which is kind of a shame, but whatever. I'll live. It's just, it would have been nice to get a little bit extra stuff to kind of swap out there. I will say, however, that the head sculpt is pretty freaking rad. I really, really like this head sculpt. There is one other that comes in the box that's basically like a sort of a blank panel with two beady eyes on it and like almost like a handprint in the same color as this splotch on the back there. And it looks good, and it adds a little bit of like interest color-wise to the front of the figure, but this head is just spectacular. It's almost like there's a skull inside of this domed helmet with like this really cool looking, simplistic, but again, cool looking mouth plate. And yeah, this is just a really, really cool looking head. I'm really into this. It's just kind of almost like 80s bad guy in the way it presents itself, you know, just kind of over the top, but at the same time understated. It's the fact that it's like some kind of giant robot skull with a almost full top of the head dome helmet, and it's like it seems so unnecessary, but it still looks cool. Yeah, I love this head sculpt. All right, let's move him back again so we can do some more regular size comparisons, not just compare him to Burly. And so there we have Spector General with the deluxe Rodimus Unicronus and the Amiibo. And again, Rodimus Unicronus is a little bit tall for a deluxe, but you can still get an idea for how tall these guys are. They are a very good size. I really, really do like the Unrustable figures. The only issue that I have with Spector General is just the color scheme comes off as a bit blank, like I keep saying. But I've said this before, I said it in the Burly video, but I will reiterate it now. These are extremely good figures. They're very nicely posable, they're a really good size, they're very solidly made, the plastic feels great on these guys. The designs are great, you get a fair number of options in terms of things like alternate heads and weapons and things like that. This guy comes with several large weapons for the robot mode, which I'm not going to go into all of them, just the ones that I have out. Let's show those off real quick. So there's the big pizza cutter thing that he can wield that has two handles on it, so you can have him kind of holding that. And this I tend to keep just clipped on his back because it's a little bit ridiculous, but at the same time imposing. This is the one that I like. It's just a chopping axe. Nothing super fancy, but it gets the job done. The only thing with this is it looks a little bit ridiculous when you clip it to the bike, but putting it in his hand, it looks pretty darn cool. Just kind of holding an axe. Yeah, he's just holding it. No big deal. Not like he's planning to chop you down with it or anything like that. These figures are excellent, and honestly, I would have done the video on Spector General sooner, but I've been waiting for Otomo to come in, because I was thankfully able to get some money down on the Kickstarter exclusive Otomo figure, which is an Akira homage, which is pretty much different shades of red and then comes with some stickers meant to sort of homage, you know, Akira. And the bike does a great job of homaging that, I have to say. So Otomo's in the mail, and I was waiting to do a video on Spector General until I got Otomo, because I figured I could just do a video on the two of them together and then do like an overall comparison. Unfortunately, the United States Post Office has decided that for whatever reason, Otomo needs to be held in customs for over a month. So, as of this recording, Otomo has been held in USPS customs for more than a month. But I basically just didn't want to wait any longer, so here we have Spector General, so yeah. Anyway, that's enough ranting on failings of the Postal Service. As I've said, these are just great figures overall. I am a bit disappointed in how blank Spector General looks in hand. Yes, there are some subtle shading differences, as I keep saying, but they're too subtle. But I do think he's going to look fantastic once I give him the treatment I gave him, so it's kind of a moot point overall. Really though, if you're at all interested in getting any of the Unrustables figures, whether it's the Spector General or Burly or any of the other Unrustables which they have, essentially if you're interested in the Unrustables at all, then I would highly recommend looking into them. Just find a color scheme you like, whether it's the orange and the black or the white and the slightly not white and the slightly less not white. I'd say get it. I don't think you'll regret it, because these are fantastic figures, and with just a small amount of panel lining, they end up looking even more fantastic, so I don't think you can go wrong. That said, if you want to get your hands on an Otomo, that's going to be a little bit more difficult because, as I understand it, outside of the Kickstarter campaign, they're going to be convention exclusives. So you'll basically just need to try and keep an eye out for conventions that Unrustables are being sold at. But I've ranted enough, as I tend to do. So, what are your thoughts on Spector General here? Do any of you have Spector General or Burly? How do you think they compare? Are you having an easier time picking out the subtle color differences on Spector General than I am? Do you think a little bit of panel lining is going to make this guy look a little bit like a stormtrooper? Which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. And if you're following along with the Unrustable stuff, have you seen the announcement that they made on the next set that they're working on? They haven't done a Kickstarter for it yet. I think they're going to, but there's a new set of figures they're working on that's part of the same universe, but not these figures. They're going to be a little bit smaller, and I forget what they're called, but basically they're like a rider that's been integrated into the bike. So you don't have a rider, you just have the bike, but the rider's sort of inside the bike, and they turn into a different looking robot that's still really cool. But yeah, I for one am definitely looking forward to getting more Unrustable stuff. Whatever your thoughts on Spector General or Burly, feel free to let me know down below. And while you're at it, if you're feeling generous, you can also feel free to like or subscribe. Any one of those three things would make me a happy Rob. And remember, art is more than meets the eye.